Ops roles in organizations are increasingly about finding ways to use AI to automate tasks,
Mm-hmm.
speed them up dramatically, find ways to increase productivity for a bunch of people in the company. Ops folks are the new resident AI tech implementation experts and are very well placed for this future of AI. What do you think?
I love it. 100% agree. AI operations. I don't know what we should call it. AI marketing operations. AI GTM operations, maybe.
GTM engineering.
I know, no. You know my thoughts on that one.
What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 168 of the Humans of Martech podcast. Today, Daryl and I are chatting about AI's talent crunch. In this episode, we'll start with marketing jobs that AI could wipe out, like campaign ops, content creation, and data analysis. Marketing roles with strong AI survival potential, like AI implementation experts, data orchestration and pipeline management, product marketing, community building, and change management. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from two of our awesome partners.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero. You've invested thousands in your marketing funnel, targeted the right ICP, spent weeks A/B testing, and optimized for conversion at every step. Finally, a high-intent prospect fills out your demo form, and then nothing. Your nurtured lead sits in a queue while you chase them with, "How's Thursday at 2 p.m.?" Meanwhile, your competitor is already on a discovery call. That's not just frustrating, that's revenue walking away. With Revenue Hero, you can qualify, route, and book leads with the right rep, so your team can start real conversations right away. For the ops folks listening, Revenue Hero syncs meeting data to your CRM, auto-credits no-shows, recalibrates when reps go on vacation, and has a ton of smart features you won't find anywhere else. If you're spending to drive demand, don't lose it at the last mile. Visit revenuehero.io/demo today.
This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new Warehouse Native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse Native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. What's up, everyone? Daryl, the topic we had is around Martech talent crunch, who's in demand, who's at risk. So I want to start off maybe with like the risk stuff. So what jobs in marketing, maybe a bit more Martech, but like marketing too, we can chat about like more generic marketing roles. What's more at risk? And then we'll chat about like what's more in demand. And maybe there's a bucket of just like, I don't know, like curious to get your take on some of these. But yeah, you want to start? What's the first one
Sure.
that comes to mind for roles in marketing that are most at risk?
So I think the traditional campaign operations role is at risk. The one where it is these people are, and I kind of feel bad because my team is a bunch. But I'm gonna swing around and say the bright side. But I think that the role of configuring marketing automation tools and email tools to spec, right? Meaning that we already know what the images should be, we already know what the text should be, we already know what the call to action should be, and we already know where everything should go within the lead routing tools. I think configuring the systems to reflect that brief will be, I don't know if it will go away completely, but that one is definitely at risk. Primarily because AI, and I think the things that we've been seeing, can do the configuration for the marketer already. And, to be honest, there's been whispers of these tools. There's already been tools that can kind of do this, right? And I think with AI, it's just going to go crazy. I mean, I've seen demos of, what was once a dream, where people just where marketers just type in what they want and the marketing automation tool produces it for them. I've already seen demos of early stage startups and add-on products that do this. So that's my first one. What is your first one?
Yeah, I'll comment on the
Oh
the
yeah, go ahead.
campaign ops first. I actually had this one in like my unclear bucket, and I
Oh,
know you've been meditating on this. Like one of your recent posts was just like unpacking all of the tasks that are bundled into campaign ops. Like I think when a lot of people think of campaign ops, it's like, oh, who's the person pressing the button in Marketo or the email tool to send out the actual email? But campaign ops is so much bigger than that. There's so many different tasks that are bundled on there, and I think your infographic, like we'll put it up on the screen for the folks on YouTube. There, like there's so much involved. I had it in like unclear because there's like two categories that I think are a bit more at risk, and some that are more likely to survive. So the more obvious ones, like more likely to be automated by AI, you kind of touched on them, like the everything that's like reporting, execution, campaign analysis, like performance tracking. When we include like more paid stuff on the campaign front, like bid adjustments, conversion rate optimization, everything in email that's like automation, nurture flows, like using knack and tools like that for like landing pages and forms. All of those things are getting way easier. Like there's already so much less hands-on stuff to do than there was like back in the day. I had it like unclear because there's a box of some of the things under there that I feel like are still pretty likely to survive like a lot of the automation, and some of the tools that you mentioned, I've played around with them and not all of them kind of like hit the bullshit like stiff test or whatever. When it comes to like campaign ops, one of the main rules that you had in that infographic was objectives and KPIs, like
hmm.
coming up with what is going to be the goal of this campaign. And I feel like AI can kind of help with that, but it requires like so much business understanding. You need strategic alignment. Like there's a lot of battles politically about should we do this, should we not do that. I think that whole like objective goal setting thing is a strategic like human part of the process. There's the whole like value and like what's going to be the main CTA that we decide for the campaign. There's a lot of creative and strategic thinking that's involved there too. Another one I have in like the unclear bucket is budgeting. Like budgeting is a big part of campaign
Hmm.
ops. There's a ton of cross-functional negotiation and strategic decisions there. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's like a bunch of other stuff like QA checklist, best practices. You had that as one of the things too. Like, AI can help with some of the best practices, but it can only spit out stuff that is already very common when it comes
Yeah.
to like new best practices, like insights from human experience, context, judgment, like all that stuff is pretty good AI replacement. But yeah, it's an
Well,
interesting one.
no, interesting that you put it in unclear. I think that, and I totally agree with the objectives, KPIs, like and the alignment. I will say that I think that the specific role of campaign ops building to spec, and what I mean by building to spec, I mean they actually didn't participate in the brief creation and like the
Hmm.
requirements. They get a ticket and
Right.
the
So
ticket
like
is full of
execution part.
everything that they
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
That specific part of the role, I think, is going to go away. And I think that what it's going to evolve into is more of what you're talking about, where they're actually looking at the objective and KPIs, and they're actually changing the requirements and changing the brief. And they're also like, you know, what I'm hoping marketers do more often are the concept of always on programs, like programs that are on continuously. And I think campaign ops is great to oversee and continually optimize those versus what we see most many campaigns doing, campaign ops doing, is doing like webinar after webinar, event after event, and it's just like a net new idea each time.
Mm-hmm.
That also I think is like it'll never go away, but I think we're going to see a lot less of that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great point. So I think there's some elements of what you described there, campaign ops, that are pretty strong, resistant to AI, and maybe we can say like, because I actually had like basic campaign execution as one of the main things at risk, like what
Gotcha.
you mentioned, like for paid stuff, like top of funnel, like automated media buying, like mid bid adjustments, tactical implementations there, everything, marketing operations like A/B testing, execution, like all of those things, maybe some strategic elements to that. But I think that what you just described, like the strategic function of marketing ops, the stuff that's less like the hamster wheel, repeating new ideas, same repurposing execution there. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's funny that you say most of my team is campaign ops.
Well, a lot of my camp, and that's why I wanted to say the hopefully saving grace is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I think the roles are going to change. I think we're a little bit for enterprise, especially. I think we're a little bit further away from that kind of change. But I will say I do have high hopes for what the role will evolve into.
Yeah. The other one I had under most at risk is a bit of a layup here. I think this one's pretty obvious. Most folks will agree. I had like generic content creation bucket in there. Like I think a lot of folks are really excited about Gen AI and using Gen AI to create like basic landing pages and not editing any of the text. We're already seeing a ton of like disruption with copywriters and content marketers who aren't very unique and are producing more generic content be replaced by AI roles. I think like explaining it as more of like routine content creation without having a distinctive voice or even like cultural nuance if you're like a global org. That one's pretty obvious though, right?
Yeah, I think that bad content is going to become obsolete. Like the creation of bad content is become obsolete. And what AI does is really just accelerate and amplify the bad content, like the crappy content. And what I think is still going to be unique and rare is really good content, like good content that speaks to people. What might be interesting is, the rise of subject matter experts, honestly, as content creators, because they don't really have the skills or like the desire to spend all this time writing. But now, and I'm sure like both you and I do this, we're both content creators. All it takes is like the spark of an idea and a few bullet points, and you have a full post, and it's going to be way better than someone, you know, like a marketer, for example, that doesn't really care about the product or about the industry and is writing like crappy content. So 100% I agree with the content creation one. The other one that's at risk for me is the data analyst roles
Mm,
that are primarily pulling data.
yeah.
So I, in the past have worked with a ton of people where they really just kind of ask you what you want. Hey, what data do you need? What are your requirements? Again, the
Hmm.
whole like built to spec thing. And I'm going to make a report for you. And then they would produce a report or dashboard and go like, here it is. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you not? What do you want to change? So you're really just telling that person to do stuff for you, and they're like an order taker, a glorified,
Hmm.
highly paid order taker, right? That role I think is completely at risk, and I think that when we get to the on demand part, I'll share like the reverse part of the coin, but um, with AI, you should be able to, given you have a good data set that's normalized and standardized, you should be able to just ask it to pull the data for you. And I think we're seeing that already. What do you think?
Yeah, 100% agree. I had this one on my most at risk also. I called it, hey, I wasn't sure what to call this bucket. Like in some of the companies I worked at, those roles were called analysts, and they actually sat on the data team and they worked with marketing ops, in a lot of cases, a tiny marketing ops team. And so the analysts like owned the Looker, the BI tool, and they were the one just like, hey, what report do you need, a new dashboard? And oftentimes it was us asking to put this new report on their roadmap. And so I agree. I think that is getting easier for like non-technical, non-analysts to build. There's this whole like automated dashboard and performance tracking idea to this. We can probably even like include some type of attribution reporting and basic like ROI stuff in this. My gut says that like this is an easy one in a sense that it will maybe not fully go extinct, but change big time. Like this whole idea of reporting, I think it's already massively shifting out of the marketing ops department into the data team department.
Hmm.
I think like what you kind of called out, like the front end dashboard data viz part of, hey, do you need this report? And I'll create it for you is super easier already today. What's changing is NLP, natural language processing, allowing business users to interact with data, have conversations with like BI
Mm,
chatbots, having a whole experience without having to download any data. You don't need to be a SQL expert. You can ask plain questions and receive plain English charts and ask the AI to like help you.
love it.
I have a client, a tiny little customer that I'm helping with. They're a big data company and they've invested in ThoughtSpot as um, their like they have a really impressive search-based interface with NLP that allows users to turn questions into a dashboard. I think they call it like
Oh, that's
Spotter.
awesome.
And I've played around with it and it's really impressive. It's not perfect. Like sometimes you're just like, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. But this whole thing of like someone coming to you and saying like, hey, what do you need me to build for you today? That's being replaced with you interacting with a chatbot that sits on top of your data warehouse or your BI tool and asking it questions and being like, what were sales in the last 6 months? What was traffic in the last 6 months? Basically, like changing that whole category in a sense.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I completely agree with that one. And yeah, that natural language processing, I find that fascinating, and I think that my guess is we're getting really close already. I'm just speaking from like just from personal experience. I create diagrams on LinkedIn, and I have Chat GPT, and I'm just using sample data, but I have Chat GPT continually iterate on the visualizations. So I'll just say, can you like turn it into a horizontal chart instead? Can
Mm,
you add like different dimensions to it to like so I'm talking to ChatGPT to do that. I don't think we're very far away from, having companies like ThoughtSpot or others where you're actually just like continually just asking questions until it gets it right. All of this given you have the right data.
right.
So can't ignore
Yeah.
that one.
That's the beauty of this space being
Yeah.
like BI dashboard tools that ideally sit on top of your warehouse. Like there's a couple of them. Like I had a long stint earlier in my career at Clipfolio, which was a BI dashboard tool.
Yeah.
And initially the vision was instead of sitting on top of the warehouse, we're going to connect all of your sources. And so it
Yeah.
basically just became like an API connector product that you could download data from GA and Facebook and product data, put it all in one spot, and then you could build visualizations on top. And there's other startups like Polymer doing this. I think the
Yeah.
future is when your BI tool sits on top of the warehouse, there's going to be a whole new category of tools that instead of buying a BI tool like a Looker and spending millions of dollars on that, our little startup can directly sit on top of your warehouse. And once we get to a stage where it
Yeah.
understands the tables and like we get to a good structure, you can have a conversation with a bot about what exists in a data warehouse. Marketers don't need to know the structure, the
Yeah.
table, the right term for this and for that. So I don't know. That's exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah. And then do you think that like it's going to be a new startup that sits on top of these data warehouses, or is it going to be the companies like Snowflake or even the visualization companies that build this AI? They've got to be thinking about this stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a
So
really interesting question. Like Census, for example, they're trying to like pitch this like unified data layer idea where they sit on top of the warehouse and they
yeah,
have like a segment type of builder that no code allows you to just have an UI and interact with what is in your data warehouse. Like marketers can quickly build segments that, would take like hours to finish loading in Marketo, looking at
yeah,
like loading screens, but you can bring in like GPT columns and enrich that data. So they're crossing into like what Clay is doing in like a
interesting.
separate side of things. So anyways, that whole area is really interesting.
And then do any of them do data normalization and hygiene? And and if they don't, I feel like that's like big, could be a whole like prediction in itself of like because AI is so important and top of mind for everyone. I think we're going to see huge increases in companies that just specialize in fixing people's data, whether it's consultancies or, there's a handful of um what's it called? Data hygiene companies like Ringlead. I'm forgetting now because I haven't been doing it very often. Like Ringlead, I think Open Prize. I think focuses on Like I'm those companies, like if any of them are publicly traded, their stock should be going like skyrocketing, right? Or I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing something.
Yeah, there's like a lot of overlap with tools that are calling themselves like enrichment focused versus even like transforming data. Like DBT has a
Yeah.
really interesting opportunity here. Also, everyone is using DBT to transform data before it goes in the warehouse and
Hmm.
after it gets out of the warehouse. Like no code AI powered data transformation. I think a lot of
Yeah.
folks are going to be investing in that, like even building workflows without rejects, without like formula fields, and being able to push that data and activate it somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool. What else? What else do you got on most at risk?
I think that that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I probably wouldn't
Cool.
nope,
We'll
no,
we'll
I
go to the areas with strong survival potential, and if there's a couple that you could disagree with me there, we can debate about putting it into the earlier category. Do you want to start? Do you want me to
yeah,
go?
no, you start this time
Okay.
and then I'll go.
So this one is an easy one, like layup for most of the folks in the audience. I think they're working in this area. I didn't know what to call it initially. It's probably just like a way to call it marketing operations, but I think
Okay.
specifically the subtask of implementing AI tech. This one
Yeah.
seems obvious, but there needs to be someone at a big company that isn't just IT who's responsible for being that like resident AI tech
Yep.
implementation person for go to market tools, specifically marketing sales, right? Like marketing ops folks who can automate tasks using AI tools are going to be highly in demand. When John Taylor and I a couple of years ago had an episode similar to this, we brought up a tweet that was really interesting from Pete Laya, who thinks a lot about this space. But he said,
Yeah.
so ops roles in organizations are increasingly about finding ways to use AI to automate tasks,
Mm-hmm.
speed them up dramatically, find ways to increase productivity for a bunch of people in the company. And he thinks ops folks are the new resident AI tech implementation experts and are very well placed for this future of AI. What do you think?
I love it. 100% agree. AI operations. I don't know what you should call it. AI marketing operations.
Mm-hmm.
AI GTM operations, maybe.
GTM engineering.
I know, no. You know my thoughts on that one.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's KNAK, and tell them we sent you. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Census. You probably have over 15 tools in your marketing tech stack, but how many of them have the full picture of your customer's journey? Census is the universal data layer in your stack. It unifies and cleans data from all your sources and makes it available for any app to use. Census makes it super easy to unify and standardize customer data, then enrich and enhance it, like running deduplication, cleaning, scoring, and routing workflows, and then sync and activate that data across all of your tools so you can actually do something with it. For marketers and data teams that work together to power big campaigns, it's so refreshing to work from a reliable source of truth. Don't just take my word for it though, since this is loved by awesome companies like HubSpot, Perplexity, Canva, Clay, Notion, and many more. Check them out at getcensus.com and tell them we sent you.
I think that these AI operators not only are going to be responsible for the implementation, but also the training and enablement. I really think that because ops folks are more technical in nature, they're well positioned to teach other people how to do this stuff. And this is something that I'm finding like over and over again of like marketers that are, doing work, and I'll ask them like, have you done 3 different versions of this copy in ChatGPT or
Mm,
in Claude or Perplexity? They're like, oh no, or like, hey, for your idea for your call to action or for your idea for your event, did you go through 10 different versions? And oftentimes the answer is no, they don't
yeah.
have it. I don't know if it's like a habit, that ops people just have, but like I think that you and I are both the same. Where whenever we have a project, the first thing we do is start talking to ChatGPT about it or Perplexity. Um, which one do you use all the time? Is it Perplexity?
I actually have both. I pay
Okay.
for ChatGPT. I have the pro license, but I also pay for Anthropic, Claude. I prefer some of
Oh,
the writing outputs a bit more in Claude, like when we convert the transcripts into like
okay.
blog post passages. But like ChatGPT is so much more powerful, like in terms of the whole scope of
Like the
things. That
reasoning or
yeah, the reasoning is. But I use Perplexity for like more search based stuff. Like coming up with ideas for this episode specifically, I use Perplexity, and it's funny. Like I was gonna bring that up earlier. Like I posted about this last week. In researching like the future of marketing ops and AI,
yeah.
asking that to Perplexity and finding me like legit sources for it, it pointed me to an article on LinkedIn. I forget this person's name is now, but I read through the article and I was like not impressed with it. Like most
Right,
of
right,
it
right.
was AI generated, and it's
Yeah.
funny that an AI generated piece of content was one of the best sources surfaced up by an AI search engine. They're
Hmm.
just like
Hmm.
feeding each other, but
That's interesting.
this is the second one I want to call as perfect transition here. Like Scott Brinker talks about this all the time. One of the areas that is really well positioned in this collaboration between marketing and AI is like a bucket of data plus API services. So
Yeah.
creating composable systems that integrate AI with your company's proprietary data, but
Yes.
also exposing data from your business to let AI assistants leverage them in a bunch of other workflows. And
Yep.
this is something we're going to talk about in a lot of upcoming episodes, but there's like this reckoning within software. Rich Waldron, the CEO and founder of Trade.ai, talked about this in the episode that I did with him.
Hmm.
We have it scheduled out. Like he's building iPaaS, right? And he says that iPaaS is the future of orchestrating AI agents. But then you have CDP tools that are saying that the CDP is the future of orchestrating AI agents. And then you have
Hmm.
marketing automation platforms that are rolling out AI agents. And you have like everyone is legitimately working on AI agents
Yes.
things in their
Totally.
Martech vendors at some point. And Rich says this like marketing operations folks, like Peep calls it like resident AI tech implementation experts. Rich is calling it more like AI referees for marketing
Oh,
tools. You're going to
interesting.
be the referee deciding like I'm not turning on the agent in that tool or that tool. I'm going to turn it on in this tool because governance is better. There's a good like area for super proofing, like
Yeah.
the like hiding sensitive information, like confidential stuff that we don't want to.
Hmm.
So we're gonna become like referees and implementation experts. Like that whole thing is changing really fast too.
I like that. AI referees, that's a good one. I think that so my on my list was like a role that's similar. I called it either solutions architect or data operations. And so I can't maybe they're both separate roles. But when I think of data operations, I think of all the behind the scenes stuff that is required to make sure your data is set up and
Mm-hmm.
connected and formatted in the right way and ready to use for AI capabilities. So like all of that is a job. And whatever you're calling that, data operations, what have you, I think that that is going to be an in demand go to needed role. It might be the most needed role in my opinion. Um, that's like another one of my predictions. Or solutions architect, which is like, hey, I want to connect these various tools that we're using and making sure the data flows between them. Um, and now, does a solutions architect more of pick the tools or make sure that they work together perfectly? I don't really know. So, but I will say that that if that is one role where like I'm intentionally selecting tools to accomplish a task and making sure the data goes through together, that also is going to be, I would say, the most in demand, you know, survivor role, very sustainable job. And I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think part of that overlaps with like the API
Yeah.
services data area. I actually had though in my like unclear bucket, and I was curious to get your take on that. This idea of like pipeline management specifically.
Okay.
I think that's like part of your answer there, like getting data ready and like formatting it so
Okay.
that you can surface it or whatever. Like there's like part of me that's unclear about it because like ETL, reverse ETL processes are becoming increasingly automated because of tools like Census, like basic data cleaning and prep
Okay.
is so much easier. And there's like self-serve no code tools to help you do that. I think that like we'll see DBT get into the more marketing operations use cases. But I don't know, like it's tricky because it's easy for us like non-data operations people or like not data engineers to say like, oh yeah, like data pipeline management is at risk to be automated by AI because we're not deeply into that space. But the thoughts that I have are data complexity continues to increase as like,
Yeah.
Martech stacks are growing, more sophisticated complexity of data integrations, blah blah blah. So that's part of the side that makes me think, there's like a bit of future proofing in there. But there's like system maintenance that needs human attention when pipelines are breaking and stuff. Custom business logic remains like really tricky across like nuances, and everyone's like a little bit different. But I don't know, there's like this thing that makes me unsure about it because of how fast the space has changed and how easier things like collecting data, putting it into warehouse and sharing it across tools that like I don't need to hire a team of data engineers to do reverse ETL for me
Right.
anymore.
Totally.
I could have one person doing that with Census. Like that's the part that like makes it a bit unclear to me.
Yeah. So let's like unpack that a little bit. So I agree with you. I don't think that, if you don't have like reverse ETL or these what do they call it when what do they call just normal ETL? I don't know. Just ETL then.
Yeah,
Um
ETL, yeah.
yeah, so if you don't have that, then you need a data engineer
Yeah.
to actually write scripts and calls to pass from data from one system to another.
Yeah.
And with the tools that are coming out, the platforms coming out today, yeah, you don't need that. So I completely agree with you. I think that for me, when I think about data pipeline, I do think that that's going to be a necessary role. It won't be a team. It'll be a necessary role because I do think someone needs to oversee the connection of you know the reverse ETL tool like Census and connecting it from all of the different activation tools or upstream data sources over to the data warehouse. I don't think it's definitely not just plug and play.
Yeah.
And it can maybe in the future become plug and play if there's some standardization. But like, so for example, those are the only way that it could go away is, I think the listeners are familiar with like Salesforce or Marketo. They have big app exchanges, and with tools that connect to the app, that are part of the app exchange, it literally plugs in. Like all you have to do is enter these tokens and these
Yeah.
API calls and these secret keys. That doesn't require a person. You can actually have a marketer or whoever, you're an admin person, enter those keys, and the tools are connected. But I don't think the data warehouse is like that. Like we're not even kind of close to that. Even
Mhm.
like Snowflake, I think they're trying to go there, but you still need a person to say like, okay, how are these going to work together? What are the data points? You know, do I wish that they connected together like Marketo and Salesforce? They just like it's like a handshake and then boom, you're connected. I think we're still far away from that, and therefore I think the data pipeline role is still going to be critical. But it's not going to be a whole team, and it doesn't need to be an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. The other one I had in like strong survival potential, maybe
Okay.
stepping a little bit out of marketing ops, is product marketing and customer marketing. So in a lot of teams,
Okay.
customer marketing is like also lifecycle marketing, and sometimes they overlap a lot with marketing ops. I've worn both of those hats. But I think product marketing and customer marketing roles that require this like leap of faith concepts derived from customer empathy, like
Yeah.
really knowing your customers, not just like asking them surveys and looking at like high level quantitative data, like the qualitative people that really sit down with customers, understand the use cases, like growth marketing that prioritizes experiments beyond what AI could potentially test. I
Nice.
like those areas of like future proofing beyond AI because like, maybe at some point in the future with like AGI, it kind of replaces this, but the role of a product marketer, especially in like complicated technical, we sell to developers type products, that's hard for AI to replace. Like a marketer
Yeah.
doing use case testing, building use case maps, like designing positioning that stands out, like speaks to people. That's really hard for AI to
Yeah.
replace.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I actually didn't think of that, but now that you've mentioned it, I agree that that's a very, you know, critical role. I think it's going to be turbocharged by AI.
Mm,
So it's going to be product marketing again, like the same way that we do content creation. Like I need to know like the different ways to position this product in front of customers, in front of different segments of customers. Come up with a different message for each segment. For enterprise, for small business, for like finance, for healthcare. And the same with customer marketing, using AI to help accelerate that. The one that I had that I listed was strategy operations, which is
hmm
I'm working on a post about. And to me, strategy operations is like the facilitation of GTM strategy from end to end. So like, you know, at a typical organization, everybody's kind of coming up with their own strategies, but they're rarely connected together, and they're rarely done so and like operationalized through and through to actually the campaign. So in a typical org, especially at enterprise, the leaders will come up with the plans, and it'll be like filter down and game of telephone change all the way down to the marketers who are like building the campaigns. And then all of a sudden you have campaigns that like literally don't even talk to each other.
Yeah.
So I think strategy operations is the facilitation of that. Not necessarily like coming up with the strategy itself, but making sure that it's implemented. So I'm bullish on that one. I'm also kind of biased because like that's kind of what my team does. But anyway, that's one that I had
Yeah.
for sustainable.
I love that one. That one's pretty similar to like I can see like a whole new like area focused on this. Like I think like part of it is campaign ops. Like when I said like that, like what is the goal of this campaign, the OKR,
Yeah.
but you're saying like more high level company strategic stuff. Like
Yes.
how do we align all of these different sub teams, especially in bigger teams? Yeah, that's a really good future proof one for sure. The other one I had kind of out of the box here a little bit is community building and something that's like the role. Like we chatted with Mac Redden. His whole idea is building like the GTN network, like go to network movement, and he's getting like sales
Mm-hmm.
folks to think more about building relationships and community with prospects and people. And that's like so hard to have AI replace that. I think AI comes in and helps out with like community management, like having
Yeah.
automation when like someone asks a question, you make sure it's routed to the right person. But at the end of the day, like the whole point of community is building relationships between humans, and
Yep.
maybe AI and robots will help with that facilitation itself. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a human thinking about the strategy and how we go to network and create those communities.
Yep.
Not always like interlapped with marketing operations, but there's always like a piece of technology involved in that. Like, do we just create like a Slack community? Are we creating a separate part of our site people can log in? So that whole aspect, still ties into Martech. But yeah, I think
Yep.
community is future proof by AI.
That's a good addition. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I wish I thought of that one too, but no, I don't really have anything to add. The community, I think, if I had to say another one, it's like brand, probably. I wrote an article one time, and it was around how we're getting way too connected to revenue, and the things that I mentioned that we things have gotten lost because we're trying to attribute everything to revenue is things like community, is things like brand, and um, product led growth type activities, like
hmm
things where like however maybe AI is helping with a lot more with that, but brand and community not so much.
Yeah, that one's tricky. The other one I had on my list is localization, and this one definitely overlaps with marketing ops. So this idea
Hmm.
of globalization is being able to speak culturally
Yeah.
informed with different local areas. And there's like an aspect of culture and understanding other countries and even like sub-regions within those countries that is so human, and it's changing constantly. That like GPT models are based on a lot of older data. You can't trust that it knows the new norms. Like our kids are going to grow up one day in high
Yeah.
school and they're going to come home with like these random terms, and they're just going to like brought up culture changes so fast, just like tech does. And I think
Yeah.
localization, speaking to that market and not saying the wrong things, like being culturally appropriate, oftentimes, I don't know, like if you've worked with like teams like that, but um
Totally.
I'm trying to think of her name. Localization. Fuck, I keep spelling it wrong. Okay, there we go. So I had Natalie Kelly on the show in November of last year, episode
Yeah.
147. And she works at Zappy, but before she worked at Zappy, she spent, what was it, 8 years at HubSpot, and she was VP of marketing. And one of her main focuses before that, and even as part of that role, was international ops and localization.
Yeah.
And so when HubSpot expanded to a bunch of different countries, it wasn't as simple as just saying like, yeah, we're gonna offer it up to a bunch of like German cities and like Asia Pacific cities and countries. Like there's a whole like thought process, and it's not just translation and translating language. It's
Yeah.
translating concepts and ideas. Sometimes single words are totally lost in translation. So, anyways, I thought that one was a really good one that involves humans.
Yeah. So, okay, that's a really smart one. So, I've got a few things to say about this. I actually did for almost a year oversee the globalization team here at my work.
Hmm.
So the couple things that I will say is 100% AI does not get you where you need to go. Like it can maybe do some slang or like cultural sayings, but there's just like the overall like what's taboo within a certain culture that you just shouldn't say. So it's so important. What I will say from overseeing this function is that it's hard to convince everyone else of its importance because
Hmm.
a lot of people are very like their own country centric.
Yeah.
And one way that you can solve for localization, because localization assumes you're creating content or marketing initiatives first in a like US based, like it's a US based kind of driven campaign,
Hmm.
and then carrying it over to the other market. There's another way to do it, which is you hire a team in the other market and they do their own thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of see a little bit more often. So I would actually bucket, even though globalization, localization is important, I would probably bucket it in unclear,
Hmm.
just depending on like, you know, number one, if the AI capabilities start to actually understand culture, which I think they kind of starting to are,
Yeah.
and number two, you know, depending on, um, can we just solve for it by like using the local talent there? I don't know.
Hmm.
Well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. What do you think about ethics, privacy slash responsibility? Where would you bucket that?
I would like this is just a knee jerk response, but I would also put it in unclear
Yeah.
because of the same reasons. It's so important, but like how often is it number one or even number two on the priority list for executives? You know,
Yeah.
it's often an afterthought and often only after they get their wrist slapped or something or they get sued. That's
Yeah.
when it becomes a priority, not like it's not the first thing they think of.
Yeah.
Um,
So
what do
companies
you
that
think?
paid attention to like the shitstorm, the PR shitstorm that happened with the PGA a couple of years back, when they
Hmm.
used Midjourney. I don't know if it was Midjourney, but they used an AI image generator to change the background and the body, like the clothes that some of the golfers were wearing, and like all of the white dudes all had like the same like classic background, but the one person of color was wearing like a worker's construction outfit and it was like on a darker background and they just like posted it on social. It's still live on Instagram. I had a whole episode with Brittany Muller and we were talking about this. Like there's a whole area of like ethics, privacy, and responsibility with AI that I think is well positioned for the future because you need to have a human point of view of underrepresented groups when it comes to using AI.
Yeah.
Most AI models are fed from things like Wikipedia, like a lot of common sources that are predominantly biased by white males in their 30s. Like, if
Yep.
you're interested to learn more about that, like Brittany Muller breaks it down really, really well. And so, yeah, I think that like this whole area of like, hey, we're using AI, we're moving faster, we're coming up with cool content. That's great. But we need to have this like regulation piece, like this last check in the process of a human that says, okay, we're about to publish this, we need to think about underrepresented groups from
Yeah.
this one idea. Are we, showcasing the POV from everyone here? Is this highly like white male biased here? Like, are we including other point of views? So that angle makes me think like that's a really interesting role. There needs to be someone on the marketing team that like does that check before we go to market to avoid shitstorms like the PGA, but also to like make your customer base feel included and like know that the marketing team behind this thought like empathetically about this campaign.
Yeah. Very needed role. Very needed role. So in the last few minutes, do you want to cover unclear? Did you have like I had like one unclear that I think we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I think we touched on all the ones that I had unclear. There was just budgeting, but I feel like budgeting kind of goes
Yeah.
into campaign ops. The one that I wanted to get your take on was I think we didn't touch this. Well, we kind of touched on it, but like this one is highly future proofed in my opinion. Change management and
Oh,
planning. I feel like that touches on like
yeah.
strategy ops a little bit on what you talked about, but like in bigger companies especially and even startups like change management requires human empathy,
Yeah.
relationship building, understanding organizational psychology from one to the other. There's like collaboration and governance. You have to like negotiate with other humans.
Yeah.
You have to find consensus, give and take, project planning, scoping, like all of those things that are like behind the scenes and marketing ops that don't get a lot of love. I think those become even more important because AI is never going to have a meeting with like a counterpart in another department when you're negotiating about like picking that tool or this campaign or that campaign. Like those are human change management things, right?
No, yeah. That's like I think the perfect one. I don't know if you put it in an unclear, but like maybe it should even be like uh, um a survivor. I there's so many examples where people just need another person to talk to reassure them about what's happening. And there's countless, when I've done change management, there's countless times where I've held a meeting telling people what changes are coming, and all of the things that I've said and all of their questions were already answered in an email or in like a wiki. But they just were just like, "What about this?" So you literally just have to be a person saying like, "Hey, it's going to be okay. Hey, don't worry about this." So 100% change management. I think that one's staying. I didn't have any other ones in unclear. I think we covered all of them. But that's a smart choice is change management for
Yeah.
100% survivor.
Cool. This was super fun. So in my research for this episode, I actually discovered the Marketing AI Institute. Not sure why I hadn't heard of them before, but their founder Paul Reitzer, not sure how to pronounce that, but he has a brilliant post about the future of work on LinkedIn that was an inspiration from the book Predictions, Prediction Machines. Essentially he's talking about knowledge work and how it fundamentally involves making predictions, even though as humans we don't think we're making predictions, but we're making a lot of guesses sometimes in our work. Jobs are essentially bundles of tasks, many of which involve predicting outcomes based on data that we have right now, like medicine, law, marketing. Primarily make predictions all the time, like in marketing stuff that even we think is complex. Like even back in the day, this is changing already, but like we're sending out a series of drip emails for marketing. We're predicting what the best subject line is, the best send time based on previous data. Like we're still making those predictions. But Paul is essentially saying, and kind of like coins our discussion here, that Humans remain essential in these like prediction centric roles for two critical reasons. One, we will always need to direct AI on what to predict. That's like where AI agents are making this a little bit fussy, but we still need to decide what it is. What's the thing that we're trying to predict, like setting the goal and the task itself. But two, we also need to use judgment to decide what actions to take based on the predictions and the recommendations that we get. And oftentimes that's where like the fear comes with letting AI agents loose and go off autonomously and do a bunch of stuff for you. Like, do you trust that their recommendation is always the right thing to do? So this is really interesting because it creates like this new paradigm where AI excels at generating predictions from data, but human expertise and intuition is always, or at least in the short term, going to remain vital for guiding AI and LLMs and AI agents in converting its outputs into effective decisions and actions based on your company, based on the nuance, based on the context that you know of that company, instead of just applying it blankly. When evaluating AI's impact on jobs, which is what we've kind of done this whole episode, the key is to break down roles into tasks, understand all the different subtasks that come into that, and identify which of them are prediction based, and recognize that AI can absolutely handle some of these predictions. Humans of Martech are always going to provide this essential framework and judgment to make those predictions useful. We'll catch you guys next time. Folks, thank you so much for listening this far. I don't know if you're tired of hearing my voice yet, but it means a lot to still have you with us. I've got a fun event to plug before you go. Imagine if we had a Shark Tank style event when we shop for Martech. What if vendors came to us instead of us spending 40 plus hours on research, on forums, and on boring sales-led demos? This is a dream that Justin Norris had, and I've been working with him, Jacqueline Friedman, and Daryl Alfonso to make it a reality. Block off your calendar on May 9th at 12 p.m. EST. The first ever Shark Tank style Martech Spotlight is happening, brought to you by Humans Martech. We'll be featuring 6 badass Martech products in a fast-paced session where Jacqueline, Justin, Daryl, and I will help judge or be the sharks. You'll get to hear directly from the founders and the marketers who work at those companies and understand your world. You'll discover new ways to build better forms and surveys with Typeform, plan, budget, and forecast better with Uptempo, uncover your incremental contribution to revenue with Powermark, optimize lead routing and scheduling with Revenue Hero, identify warm prospects with Common Room, and increase your response rates with Sendozo. Join us at humansandmartech.com/spotlight. Again, that's May 9th at 12 p.m. EST. By the way, if you register, your email will not be shared with presenters, and you won't get added to any newsletters or drip campaigns. That's my promise to you. Okay, I'm shutting up now. Thank you so much for being a listener this far. I'll catch you next time.